Hi crafters, welcome back to another segment of KISS, Keep It Simple Sylvia. This is a brand new month, the month of September, and all month long we're going to be working with booklets. I've been making booklets ever since I was a little kid playing with my dollies. I used to use construction paper and composition paper and just cut them up and staple them and glue them together and make little booklets that I would nursery rhymes in. I would write out nursery rhymes and draw pictures and I'd give them to my dollies and they would be my little dolly books. And so over the years with the things that have come on the market for scrapbookers and crafters to use, of course that craft has evolved and there's all sorts of wonderful things that you can use, and there's already pre-made booklets that you can just decorate however you want to. But today I'm just going to do something very simple, and what I'm going to use is just some cardboard. Everybody has access to cardboard. This is cardboard that's from the backing of a 12 by 12 pad of scrapbooking paper. Save these. Same with this one. This cardboard is from labels. Save that. It's cardboard. You can use it. You can make all sorts of neat things out of it. And then of course you have boxes that you get things delivered in, and it's a thicker, it's a corrugated cardboard, and that's wonderful because you can tear that apart and it gives you all sorts of character to the page that you'd be working on. So today though we're just going to do a very simple little booklet, and I'm going to use these pieces of cardboard from the booklet, from the 12 by 12 sheets of paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide how big I want to make this booklet. And I like making 4 by 6 booklets. For some reason, I don't know, I just think it fits real good in your hand, and I like the way it looks. Plus you can, if you're going to use scrapbook paper, you can get a lot of cuts out of a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically cut this in half, because this is 12 by 12, so I'm just going to cut it on the 6. And then I'm going to cut each of these into 4, to 4 inches. So I should get 3 of them out of here. Now you can use these as covers for a booklet, or you can actually use them as pages in the booklet. Some booklets you might want to have them where they're stiff, the pages are stiff, and that's where cardboard works real well. Others you might want just them to be the cover and have thinner paper on the inside. If you're going to do that, then use regular scrapbook paper, even composition paper, or good old construction paper. They all work wonderful. I'm going to make mine thick. This is going to be a thick book. So I'm going to use the actual cardboard itself as the actual pages. So out of one 12 by 12 piece of cardboard that's on the back of the scrapbooking papers, I'm able to get 6 pages, which would equate to actually 12 surfaces. You got the front and back of each one. So I have 6 pages here. Now that in itself can make a pretty good size booklet, particularly being thick like this. And then if you want to embellish it and put lots of, dimensional items on it that would stick out, this would make a really big, quite thick booklet. And so that's what we're going to work with. So out of one piece of backing paper, we get enough to make one booklet. And what you can do with this is you can decorate this a bunch of different ways. You can paint it, you can ink it, you can stamp it, you can adhere scrapbooking paper to it, you can put book paper on it, you can just do all sorts of things to decorate these pages. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of Tim Holtz's Distress paints, because I like the way the paints play together and I like the way they look on craft paper, because this is basically the color of this craft paper. So that's what I'm going to do. Another thing that you can use to add pages to your booklet are plastics, packing material. seems like everything we buy today is packaged in plastic, and it's a pretty good weight of plastic. Save these because you can cut these apart and you can make some pages for booklets out of them. So that's what I'm going to do. I think this was a die kit that came in, and I'm just going to cut this apart also. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut it apart with scissors, and then I'll use my um, cutting board to actually cut it straight. And whatever I cut off of this, I'm still going to save because this plastic makes a real good thing to use if you're going to ever make any of those exploding boxes or any want to use add any dimension. Thin little strips of this plastic with things attached on the top are wonderful. So I'm just going to cut this apart, and then, like I said, I'll be using my cutting board, and it's not going to be the exact same size as the cardboard, but that's okay. This adds another element to the little booklet that we're going to be making. Now remember, save these pieces right here, because these can be made to use to add dimension to like those pop-up cards, and then pop-up book boxes. I know a lot of people use like stiff paper to mount those things with. And the neat thing about using the plastic is that it's almost invisible, so it kind of looks like it's floating, so that's kind of cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut these into, first of all I want to see what size they actually are. This is actually 5 3/4 by 4 1/2. So I'm going to cut this to 4 and probably 5. Okay, so I'm going to make a straight cut on this side here, just so I have a nice clean edge. Sometimes you have to help it along a little bit, that's okay. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to clean up all the edges. And when you use it on your cutting thing, depending on what kind of a cutting board you have to really press real hard to get through the plastic. If you have one of those guillotine ones, it's not so difficult to work with. I don't have any luck with a guillotine. It seems like I always cut it uneven on a guillotine. So I found that this one is the one that works the best for me. But everybody has their favorites. Okay, now I pretty much have got this. Let's see what size this is now after I trimmed it all up. Still over 5 inches, right around 4. So let me make this a little more even. And cut this down a little bit too. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my crocodile or neat thing about this crocodile is that it cuts anything. It's so cool. Okay, so now I've got another piece of plastic that is going to go in my booklet as an additional little page in the booklet. And you see it's smaller in size, but that's okay. That's fine with me, in fact. And I'm going to do that with the other one that I cut out, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got everything all cut and I even rounded the one edge. This is the edge I'm going to bind and I wanted the outside edge to be rounded. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work with some Tim Holtz Distress paints. And I love the way these paints play together. They just, oh, they're amazing and they have a wonderful texture when they're dry. It's almost like velvet. It's so cool. But you can use any paints that you want, any acrylic, any oil, any paints that you want. And because it's approaching fall, I thought I would use some fall colors. If you're interested in any of the distress paints, one thing you have to know is you have to shake them real good. And there's a little ball, mixing ball that's inside here. If you don't hear that when you're shaking, that means it's stuck up here in the top and you're not going to get any flow to the dauber top. They all have a dauber top here. If this dries out, all you got to do is just spritz it with some water and let it soak for a few minutes and it'll reactivate. So when you're shaking, you want to make sure. Can you hear that? That's what you want to hear. You want to hear that ball rolling around on the inside. Okay, so since it's fall, I'm going to use some fall colors. Well, getting close to fall. It's not fall here in the desert, but elsewhere it's starting to become fall. So I'm going to use some peeled paint. And to get it activated, you just kind of give it a squeeze. I want to get some paint down here on my surface. And I'm going to use some ripe persimmon. This is a nice bright orange color. Get that down on the surface. And then I'm going to use some scattered straw. That's a nice yellow color. Kind of a yellow brownish kind of a color, gold kind of a color. And then I'm going to use some crushed olive. That's a yellow green kind of a color. Put it over here with the other. I'm going to load things up here on my mat. And then I'm going to spritz with water because these paints, while they're wet, are reactive with water, which is the nice thing about them. And then I'm just going to put my cardboard down on them, give them a little swirl, and then lift them back up again. Sure, that's easy for you to say. And look at that. Isn't that marvelous? Oh my gosh, I love that. And I'll just set this aside to dry, and I'm going to do front and back of all of these. Look at the colors in that. Isn't that pretty? And when you let these dry, you can go back over on top of them because once they're dry, they're no longer reactive with water. So then you can build layers, different layers up on them. I love doing this technique on these. And it's starting to dry a little bit. And you can also spritz on here and it will help blend the colors a little bit too. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Just love it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this to all 6 of the cardboards that we cut out of that one sheet. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the first layer down on them. Look at these colors. Aren't these wonderful? It's starting to look like some leaves, fall colored leaves on that brown. They pretty? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another layer of color to these. And I'm going to brighten them up a little bit, so I'm going to add more of yellow tone. So I've got wild honey here, and I'm going to put that down. And I'm not going to put as much down as I did when I was trying to cover the whole thing, because all I basically want to do is just highlight it. I just want to put some lighter color on top now. And this is scattered straw. And then I'm going to spritz it again with some water lightly. And then I'm just going to take the pages and I'm just going to touch them in there. See how I'm just lightly touch them in there and build up another layer. on that. And I'll do that with each of these just to give it another dimension. I just love how this works because it just every single one of them is different. Isn't that pretty? Okay, and then I will let these dry and then I'll do their back sides too. And I'll be right back. Okay, I've got everything all covered now. Look at that, isn't that just yummy? Definitely looks a lot like fall, doesn't it? All those great colors in there. Love the way they look. And then what I ended up doing around the edge is I took the dauber and I just went around the edge. And then I did the same thing with the plastic because this is paint. It will adhere to the plastic. I mean, if you scratched it off with your fingernail, of course it'd come off, but I just wanted to highlight the little plastic thing. Now we have to bind it. And there's so many different ways that we can bind. I can punch holes in here, and then I can use just these little O-rings that you can get at Staples. You can get, I don't know, like a box of 50 really cheap at Staples. You can get them in colors or you can get them in silver and gold. And I can use that to go through the holes. If I don't want to use that, I can use ribbon. And what I'm going to do with this ribbon is I'm going to stain it with the same colors that I used on here. I can also use, here's hemp. I can bind with that. I can bind with just regular cotton twine. I can stain that up. Or I can bind with jute. Jute has a real nice rustic color to it and feel to it, so maybe I just might do that. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to color up some of this binding, seam binding, and let's see what that looks like. So all I do with that is I'm going to use the exact same colors that I used on the boards and put the peeled paint down. You can do this with baker's twine too. I'm going to put the wild honey down. I want to make sure I get enough down because I'm going to pull off a couple yards of this. And some crushed olive. And then some of the ripe persimmon. And then some of the scattered straw. Getting this really loaded up here. And then I'll spritz everything. And then I'm going to just tear off a ton of this. I don't know how much I'm tearing off. Because if I don't use it all on this project, I'll use it on another project. Okay, I've got it all, and I'm just going to just start mixing it. Doesn't that look great? Oh my gosh. Now you don't want to overmix because it'll blend the colors. So I think I got pretty much all soppied up here. Okay, and then I'm just going to set this aside. Look at that. Isn't that great? Look at those colors in there. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. Actually, I'm probably going to use my heat gun on it. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, for just a simple binding, I punched 3 holes in it with my crocodile. I just love this thing because this goes through cardboard like it's butter. And then I put those little O-rings on it. So now we have this cute little booklet that we can decorate for fall. I can add some places here to put pictures. These kind of things I really like to put some rub-ons on, and then that way you use it to see through to the next page. If you put words on it, then when you flip it over, the words are backward. So I generally don't put words on these. I generally put some type of rub on or paint something on it or something so I can do it for both sides. And then just put I probably won't be using pattern paper. I'll probably just be using some oranges and golds and browns just so that you can mount some pictures on here. And we got a simple little book that all it took was one sheet of cardboard to make this little booklet, and then some packing material. How cute is that? Now I'm going to take these off, and then I'm going to put the ribbon through it, and we'll see how completely different it looks. Be right back. Okay, here it is bound with the seam binding that we stained up with the colors that we used in the project. And all I did was just, poke it through with a pair of tweezers, and then just kept poking it through page after page until I got down to the end. And the nice thing about if you do bind with this kind of way, whether it's ribbon or twine or whatever, you can always untie it to adjust how thick you want this book to be. Depending on how much you put in here, if you do like accordion folds for mounting pictures on, where you do like it's called like a waterfall type fold, and you put a whole bunch of places here for the pictures to be mounted and stuff, and then depending on the types of embellies that you might put on here could make this pretty thick. You can always adjust it by just loosening the ribbons here, and then probably add to this by putting some charms on it or something. But so there we have it. We have a cute little booklet, so easy to make, out of one piece of 12 by 12 cardboard, a couple pieces of plastic, and now it's all ready to go. Isn't that pretty? Gosh, I love doing these things. This is probably my favorite project to do. I love making booklets, all sorts of different kinds of booklets. Well, I hope I've inspired you to use some of your leftover scrapbooking items or just some packing material that you would have at home to make a cute, inexpensive booklet. And you don't have to use distress paints. You can use whatever paints that you would have. You can use inks. You can come back in here and you can stamp backgrounds on it. It's just all sorts of ways that you can decorate it and make it yours, give it to somebody. Gosh, I love the colors in this. It's just, oh, I'm eager for fall. Except out here in Arizona, we don't really have much of a fall. The leaves don't change colors or anything. So I have to do this kind of stuff so I can see my colors. Fall's my favorite time of year. Isn't that pretty? Well, I hope that you enjoyed this, and join me again next week for another segment of Kiss Keep It Simple Sylvia, where we'll be doing another booklet. Bye for now, crafters.